Rian woke to the sound of sand scratching his tarp. For a moment he lay still on his back, eyes open to the low blue of the plastic above him. The tarp sagged in the middle where last week's dust storm had stretched it. A thin line of grit had worked its way through the seam and piled on his blanket. He watched one grain slide down, catch, and stop. The air was cold. His breath fogged faintly. Outside, someone coughed, then spit. A stove hissed to life somewhere in camp. The smells came with it, a moment later. Boiled grain, burnt coffee, hot metal. He pushed the blanket off and sat up. His muscles ached from yesterday's climb through a broken carrier hole. He rolled his shoulders, listened to the small pops in his back, then reached for his boots. They were stiff with old salt and sand. He knocked them together, dumped out a small dune, and pulled them on. His toes found the familiar worn spots. He flexed them, then tied the laces tight. He ducked his head, pushed the tarp aside, and crawled out. The sky was still dark, with a thin gray line low in the east. Stars showed clear above the camp. The wreck field beyond lay as a darker sea of angles and shadows, rising in humps and teeth against the horizon. The air tasted of dust and old metal. Wind carried the faint, sour reek from the reprocessing pits far to the north. Closer, he smelled oil, sweat, and the acid sting from Sella's battery still. The camp was a scatter of tarps, patched tents, and a few old cargo pods turned sideways. Most were closed. The closest fire was just embers, a dull red under ash. Someone had left a dented kettle on a rock beside it. No one moved there. Rian stood, stretched, and turned toward the sound he had half heard in his sleep. Low, deep, like a distant storm that never moved. The sky barge. He walked past 2 sleeping shelters and a stack of stripped hull plates until he had a clear line of sight north. He shaded his eyes with his hand, though it was still dim. There it was, a long, dark shape moving low over the desert, lights blinking slow and steady along its flanks. The barge's belly bulged with sealed containers, waste from the inland cities, broken machines, chemical sludge, old bioplast, all headed for the pits. The barge's engines gave off a faint, constant hum. It vibrated in his ribs more than his ears. No hazard lights for the ground, no warning sirens. It did not need to care who walked below it. He watched it pass. It left no trail, only a slight shimmer in the air. Behind it, the stars settled back into place. He spat once in the dust. Habit, not that it changed anything. His stomach growled. He turned back to his shelter. Inside, he knelt by the small crate that held his life. The lid was a cut-down panel from an old cargo door. He slid it aside. Inside were 3 neat piles. On the left, food packs and a half-empty water skin. In the middle, tools, a short pry bar, a hand drill, a set of cracked but sharp cutters, a small sensor wand that only worked on good days. On the right, wrapped in cloth, his parts. He lifted the top cloth, careful not to snag anything. A handful of circuit boards, some with burned corners, some clean. 2 intact cable spools, a sealed relay block with a faded manufacturer's stamp, a small, heavy cylinder with contact points at one end and no markings at all. He had found that one 3 days ago in a gutted gunship. He still was not sure what it was. Not much, not enough. He ran his thumb along the edge of one board, traced the lines. He liked the way they made sense, even when he did not know their use. Someone had thought them through, laid them out. He thought about Sella's last count. Camp fees due in 2 days, fuel cells low, his own water nearly gone. The cheap grain she sold was getting worse, more husk than meal. He wrapped the parts again and set them aside. Then he pulled the relay block out and the heavy cylinder and put them in his satchel. He added the cutters, the sensor wand, a coil of rope, and his goggles. He hesitated, then took the last of his dried meat and tucked it in as well. He shrugged into his cut-off overalls, tightened the belt, and slung the satchel across his chest. The strap bit into his shoulder. He adjusted it until it sat right. Outside again, the camp was waking. A child ran past barefoot, chasing a plastic bottle. A man with a scarred scalp sat on an overturned crate, lacing his boots with slow fingers. From the far side, near the line of old landing struts, came a low argument in a language Rian did not know. He headed toward the center of camp where Sella kept her tables. Her space was marked by 3 upright hull ribs planted in the ground, forming a rough triangle. Between them, tarps stretched overhead. Under the tarps, 2 folding tables, a stack of crates, and Sella's big water drum. A solar array leaned against one rib, tilted toward the pale light. Sella herself stood by the battery still, checking a gauge. Steam rose in thin white threads from a coil of tubing. Her robe sleeves were rolled to her elbows. Her cybernetic eye glowed faint amber even in the morning dim. "You're early," she said without looking up. "You're awake," Rian said. She snorted. "Someone has to keep you lot from drinking the battery acid." He came closer. The heat from the still brushed his face. He smelled hot plastic and something sharp that made his nose itch. Sella tapped the gauge once, then straightened. She was taller than him, by a head and twice his width. Her skin was cracked from years of sun. Fine lines radiated from the corners of her remaining eye. "You bring me something?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. He opened his satchel and set the relay block on the table. She picked it up, turned it in her hands, and grunted. "Clean." "Pulled it from a sealed housing," he said. "No scorch?" She set it down, reached under the table, and brought out a small tester. She clipped it to the contacts, watched the tiny display. A green line flickered, then steadied. "Good," she said. "Old but good." She unclipped it and looked at him. "What else?" He hesitated, then took out the heavy cylinder and set it beside the relay. Sella's eyebrow rose a little. "And this is?" "Found it in a gunship spine," he said. "Near the jump coils. No markings. Heavy." She picked it up, turned it. Her fingers traced the faint seams. "Not a coil," she said. "Maybe a field modulator. Or just ballast. Hard to say." She shook it next to her ear. "No sound." She set it down, then shrugged. "I'll give you half rate," she said. "For mystery." "Half of what?" he asked. "Half of what it's worth when I know what it is," she said. He gave her a thin smile. "So a quarter of what it's worth." She almost smiled back. "You want to argue math before breakfast?" He shook his head. "I want water. And grain? And one fuel cell if you're not lying about being generous this week." "Generous," she repeated. She scratched her jaw. "You're behind on camp fees, Rian." "I know." "You know doesn't fill the drum." He looked at the relay and the cylinder on her table. They looked small there. "Lost." "I'll go deeper today," he said. "Bring back more." She watched him for a moment. Her cyber eye whirred softly as it adjusted focus. "You hear the talk?" she asked. "About what?" "Survey drone," she said. "Corp issue. Came over the south line yesterday. Old control tower saw it on the horizon. No beacon, no escort." He had heard something the night before. A few words caught by the fire, but he had been tired and not listening. "Maybe it's gone," he said. "Maybe it's circling," she said. "Maybe it's mapping holes we thought they forgot about. Maybe it's sniffing for unlicensed heat signatures." She tapped the table. "Like yours." He looked past her, toward the wreck field. The first light picked out edges now. The nearest hulks glowed faint orange. Beyond them, the deeper wrecks lay in shadow. The ones no one had stripped clean yet. The ones with tight spaces and old traps. "They don't come down," he said. "Not here." "Usually," she said. "Usually they don't care. But if a drone's out, someone up there remembered this place exists. Or they got bored. Bored is worse." He shifted his weight. The satchel strap dug into his collarbone. "If I stay shallow, I get scraps," he said. "You know that." "I know you're not the only one thinking that," she said. "The others will see you go deep. They'll follow. More heat, more noise. Drone likes that." "I know how to keep quiet," he said. She snorted again. "You know how to climb where the metal's rotten and not die. That's something. But corp eyes don't care how careful you are. They see a body where it shouldn't be, they flag it. Then we get patrols, or debt notices, or conscription vans. None of those are good for business." He looked at her. "So you want me to sit in camp? Watch my water run out?" "I want you alive," she said. "Alive people owe me. Dead ones don't." He huffed a small laugh. "Honest of you." "Always, Fish," she said. She picked up the relay block again, set it down with a little more care. "For this and the mystery weight," she said. "I'll square yesterday's meal. Give you 2 days of water, 1 bag of grain, and half a cell." "Full cell," he said. "Half," she said. "You want full, bring me something that sings when I test it." 3 days water, he said. She narrowed her eye at him. "You planning to get lost?" "Planning not to come back empty," he said. She looked at him another long moment, then nodded once. 3 days water, she said. "But you bring that drone down on us. I'm selling you to the first patrol that lands." "You'd get a good price," he said. "Not as good as for working jump coils," she said. "So don't test it." She turned, lifted the lid on the water drum, and filled 2 battered canisters. She set them on the table, then reached under and brought out a cloth bag of grain and a half-charged fuel cell wrapped in foam. He took them, packed them in his satchel around his tools. The added weight settled against his hip. Sella slid his relay and the cylinder into one of her crates without ceremony. "South line is where they saw it," she said. "If you go deep, go north. Stay in the shadow of the carrier stacks. Metal's thicker there, harder for a drone to see through." He nodded. He had gone that way before, but not as far as he wanted. "And stay away from any holes with corp marks still showing," she added. "If they didn't strip their own, they left something nasty in them." "I know," he said. "Say it again," she said. "Stay away from corp marks," he said. And if you see the drone? Hide, he said. Wait it out. Don't wave. Good, she said. You're not completely stupid. He adjusted his goggles up on his forehead. The cracked lens caught a bit of light. You ever think about leaving? He asked suddenly. He was not sure why. The barge's hum was still in his bones. Sella looked at him, then out toward the desert. Where would I go? She asked. Everywhere's owned by someone. Here, at least I know whose boots are on my neck. Theirs, he said, jerking his chin toward the empty sky. And mine, she said. Now get out of here. Dawn's not waiting for you. He gave her a short nod and turned away. As he walked past the last line of shelters, the ground changed under his boots. Packed camp dirt gave way to looser sand mixed with old ash. Bits of metal poked through, a twisted strut, a cracked panel, a half-buried wheel. The wreck field began. He paused once, looking back. Sella stood under her tarp, already bent over a crate, sorting. The camp around her was waking fully now. Voices rose. A baby cried. Someone cursed at a stuck zipper. Smoke from 3 fires curled up and flattened in the cold air. Beyond them, the barge was a shrinking dot, moving toward the pits. He turned his back on all of it and walked toward the hulks, the satchel heavy on his shoulder, the day's risk already pressing at the edges of his thoughts. By late morning, the heat was already pushing up from the sand, a slow, steady pressure on Rian's boots. The light had gone from soft gold to white glare. The wreck field shimmered. Hulls and broken spires wavered in the distance like they were floating on water. He kept to the shadow of a tilted freighter spine as long as he could. The metal was sun-hot even in shade. His hand brushed it once and he jerked away, swore under his breath, then wiped the sweat from his palm onto his cut-off sleeves. He checked behind him again. Nothing but rippling air and the faint dark line of the camp far out on the flats. No glint of other scavengers' scopes. No black dot of a drone against the sky. Just the low, distant hum of the sky barge. A steady note on the edge of hearing. He shifted his goggles down over his eyes and started across the open sand. The inner wrecks rose ahead of him, half-buried ribs and towers. Most of them he knew. The broken carrier with its collapsed hangars. The round, dented thing everyone called the coin. Good for copper wiring and not much else now. The long, gouged warship that still smelled faintly of burned plastic if you got close. The hull he wanted sat beyond those, nose down in a slope of packed sand and fused glass. He had seen it for years from the safer lines. It lay at an angle, like it had tried to bite into the planet and failed. Only a strip of its flank showed, a smooth curve of metal with a faint, strange sheen. No gun ports, no cargo doors, no company crest. He had watched it through Sella's old scope once, seen the markings near the buried edge, not the usual blocky corporate script, thin clean lines, curved symbols like they were made by someone with time to spare. He had told himself he would go there one day, when he was older, when he had better gear, when he could pay someone to watch for patrols. He didn't have better gear now, just his cracked goggles, his 2 canteens, the patched filter mask hanging at his throat, and a small pack with tools and a few coils of rope. He had Sella's warning in his ears about the survey drone. He had the empty feel of his credit tag in his pocket. He went anyway. The sand under his boots changed as he neared the inner line. It grew harder, glassy in patches where fire from the old battle had licked it. Scraps of metal showed here and there, twisted brackets, a half-melted chair frame, nothing worth breaking stride for. He slowed when he reached the last line of obvious scav marks. Boot tracks, old cut lines and holes where people had taken panels. A broken drill head left where it had snapped. Past this, fewer footprints. People came in sometimes, but not many. The risk of getting caught here was higher. The patrols liked to make examples near the deep wrecks. Easier to claim someone had been trying to tamper with restricted assets. Rian paused in the shadow of a jagged beam and scanned again. The sky was pale and empty. The air tasted dry and hot, with a faint metal tang. He listened for the mosquito whine of a drone's rotors, heard only the hiss of wind over sand. He moved on. Up close, the half-buried hull looked even stranger. The metal skin was smooth and unpitted in long stretches, like it had shrugged off the centuries of sand. Where the sand had cut into it, the edges were clean, almost sharp, not crumbly like most old alloys. He ran his fingers along one exposed seam. It was cool under the sun somehow. That made him pull his hand back. Then he did it again, to be sure. Still cool. Not right, he muttered. He walked along the visible curve, boots slipping a little on the sloped glass. The hull disappeared into sand both above and below. He knew from the angle that the main body of the ship had to be buried deep, maybe whole. No obvious entrance, no torn cargo bay, no impact hole. He squinted at the markings he had seen before. They were still there, faint under a film of dust. Lines and loops, a few small triangles. Some of them looked almost like the old maintenance symbols he had learned from other wrecks. Flow. Pressure. Power. But not quite. He wiped a patch clean with his sleeve. The paint came off in a thin smear, still a little glossy. He frowned. On the warhulks, paint flaked away like old skin. He circled the exposed section twice before he found the break. It was a narrow tear low on the curve, half hidden by a drift. Not a clean cut, more like something inside had pushed out and cracked the skin. The edges were bent, but not too jagged. A small person could squeeze through. He scraped away sand with his hands and boots until he had enough room to look in. Darkness waited inside. His eyes adjusted enough to see a tight passage, maybe a maintenance crawl. Cables hugged the ceiling in neat bundles. Panels along the sides were mostly intact. No obvious rust, no sagging. He sat back on his heels and looked at the bright, empty sky again. The air outside was hot and thin. His canteen sloshed light at his hips. Inside there might be cooler air. Maybe sealed compartments. Maybe old emergency packs. Maybe a core, or nothing. Just a long, tight tube that led nowhere, and collapsed on him. He slid his pack off, checked it fast. Lamp half charged, 2 small cutting tools, pry bar, coil of thin rope, 3 glow sticks, a roll of tape, the patched filter mask. He pulled the mask up over his mouth and nose and tightened the straps. It smelled of his own sweat and old dust. He clicked the lamp on and off. The beam was weak and yellow, but it cut the darkness a little. He took a breath. The mask made it feel different, more present. He clipped the lamp to his headband, slung the pack on again, and went in feet first. The metal scraped his back and chest as he wriggled through. For a moment he was stuck, shoulders pressed, sand shifting under him. He exhaled, flattened himself, and shoved. The whole edge slid along his boots. Then he dropped. He hit a floor hard enough to jar his teeth. Pain shot up through his knees. The lamp swung and banged against his temple. He lay still, listening. The quiet was thick. No wind, no hum of the sky barge. Just the faint ring in his ears and the soft tick of cooling metal. He pushed himself up to his hands and knees. The air felt cooler on his skin under the overalls. He took a cautious breath through the mask. No sharp chemical sting. No mold, just a dry, slightly stale taste. He swept the lamp around. He was in a narrow corridor, maybe 1.5 meters wide. The ceiling was just above his head. The walls were smooth, with recessed panels and thin seams where access hatches might be. The floor had a faint grid pattern for traction. No litter, no fallen cables, no bones. He stood slowly. His shoulders brushed the walls. His breath sounded loud in the mask. He reached up and knocked his knuckles against the ceiling. Solid. No echo of loose space above. He pressed his palm to the wall. Cool, like the outer hull. No give. Most wrecks he knew had been picked over and cut open. Their guts spilled, their corridors twisted and half collapsed. This felt held, like it had been waiting. He shook his head at that thought. Ships didn't wait. They broke or they didn't. He walked one way until the corridor ended in a sealed door. The door was a smooth oval with no handles, just a faint outline and a small dark panel at shoulder height. He leaned close. The panel's surface was dead. No light, no text. He tapped the metal. Solid. He put his ear to it. No sound. He turned back and went the other way. The corridor angled down slightly, following the buried nose of the ship. The lamp beam caught small signs of stress in the walls. Hairline cracks. A slight bulge where something had pushed from outside. Sand had pressed in around the tear he had used. He pictured the weight of it above him. Meters of sand. The rest of the hull. The old battle wreckage stacked and half-fused on top. If something shifted, it would happen fast. He would not have time to climb back to the tear. He kept going. After maybe 20 meters, the passage widened into a small junction. 2 side corridors branched off. One sloped further down. The other leveled out. He hesitated. Down meant deeper into the ship. More pressure, more risk, but also more chance of untouched core sections. Level might loop closer to the surface. Less risk. Maybe just empty rooms already bled of anything good. He knelt and put his fingers on the floor. He felt for vibration out of habit. On some wrecks you could sense the distant thump of sand slips or the faint hum of buried power. Here there was nothing, just the cool dead metal. His throat felt dry. He swallowed, but the mask made it feel like he was swallowing air instead of spit. He chose down. The sloping corridor curved gently. His lamp showed more of the strange markings on the walls, near junction boxes and bulkheads. Some looked like the standard hazard glyphs he knew. A circle with 3 lines might mean radiation. A triangle with a bar could mean high voltage. But the shapes were cleaner, more flowing. The language behind them felt older. He could guess at some, but not all. He tried to imagine the people who had walked here when it was new. Not soldiers, no gun racks, no blast scoring, no corporate logos, maybe explorers like the old stories. People who went where there was nothing, and came back with maps and samples, not ore and prisoners. He snorted softly at himself. Stories didn't pay camp fees. The air grew cooler the deeper he went. It brushed his sweat and made him shiver once. He realized suddenly that his breath inside the mask felt too easy. No faint pull from the filter. No taste of outside dust. He paused and lifted one edge of the mask. Just a little. The air that hit his nose was clean. Dry but not desert dry. No grit. No sharpness. Just air. He sucked in a quick breath, then let the mask fall back. His heart thumped faster. If there was still pressure in here, that meant SEALs were holding somewhere. That meant life support systems had survived, at least in part. And those systems used power. Power meant cores. Cores meant credit. Maybe enough to buy his way out of this whole rust field. He moved more carefully now. His lamp picked out more sealed doors like the one near the entry. All closed. All with dark panels. No emergency lights. No flicker of standby glows. He stopped at one and brushed his fingers over the panel. The surface was smooth, almost oily. No seams. He pressed harder. Nothing. He thought about trying one of his cutters, then decided against it. Cutting into a pressurized space without knowing the pressure was a good way to get a door in the face or a rush of air that pulled you in and slammed you against something sharp. He had seen a man die like that in a half-buried cargo hold when he was 10. He kept walking until the corridor opened into a wider space. His lamp showed a low-ceilinged room, maybe 5 meters across. Consoles lined the walls, all dead. A central column rose from floor to ceiling, wrapped in cables. The floor here was a smooth plate, no grid. There were no chairs, just small circular marks where they might have bolted down once. He stepped in. The air felt even cooler. His skin prickled. He turned slowly, sweeping the lamp. The consoles had more of the thin curling script. He picked out a symbol that looked like the one for navigation he had seen on a different class of ship, but stretched. Another that might mean systems. It was like reading a dialect of a language he barely knew. His beam crossed the central column. For a second he thought he saw a faint reflection, like a surface behind glass. He walked closer. Up close, the column had a narrow vertical strip that looked different. Not just metal, something smoother. The strip was at eye level, the width of his hand. Below it, waist high, was a small circle set into the surface. The circle was a different material again, dull, slightly matte, like skin that had never seen the sun. He reached out and touched the strip with his fingertips. Nothing happened. He tapped it lightly. Still nothing. No hum, no light. He let his hand fall to the circle. It was cooler than the rest of the column, almost cold. It had a faint texture, like the pattern on his own palms. He hesitated. This felt like a control of some kind. A reader, a trigger. Old ships sometimes had biometric locks keyed to captain or crew. Touching them when you were not supposed to could send a ping, or trigger a defense, or do nothing at all, because everyone it knew was long dead. He thought of Sella's warning again. The survey drone, the net, the way the corporate systems liked to know when something woke up. Then he thought of the empty tag in his pocket, and the campmaster's tight mouth when he had come up short last week. His fingers stayed where they were. He pressed his palm flat against the circle. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the metal under his hand warmed, fast, like skin soaking up sun. A thin, sharp tingle ran up his arm to his elbow like static. He jerked, but his hand stuck to the surface, held by something he could not feel but could not fight. A line of pale blue light snapped on inside the vertical strip. It ran from top to bottom in a clean pulse, then settled into a soft glow. Rian's breath hitched. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Somewhere deep in the ship something clicked. Very faint, then another click. Closer, like a relay flipping. He swallowed. His hand released all at once. He stumbled back a step, heart pounding. The blue strip brightened, then dimmed again. A small, almost invisible symbol appeared at the top. He did not know it. He stood very still, lamp forgotten in his hand, and listened to the dead ship start to make the first tiny sounds of waking. The panel under his hand warmed. Rian froze. He almost pulled back, but the light under the cracked surface brightened, running in a slow line along his palm and up toward his wrist. It stopped where his birthmark began, that faint set of pale, straight-edged lines under the skin. The light pulsed there, once, twice, like a slow heartbeat. He held his breath. The air in the corridor was stale and dry. His lamp, wedged in a bracket on his chest, threw a thin cone of light over the wall. Dust motes drifted in it. A soft click sounded behind the panel. Then a hiss, like pressure releasing. The wall seam to his left glowed. Thin lines, invisible a second ago, lit up in the same pale blue and ran in a neat rectangle about the size of a door. Rian stepped back fast, boots scraping on the metal deck. His hand went to the pry bar at his belt without thinking. The rectangle slid inward with a smooth, tired motion. Dust shook loose from the frame and drifted down. Behind it, darkness waited, thicker than the corridor. Cold air washed over him. It smelled different, less rust and old insulation. more like stone that had not seen sun in a long time. He swallowed. His heart was beating hard now. The stories from camp pressed in at the edges of his mind. Ghost machines, old ships that woke up and ate people. Voices that got into your head and made you walk off cliffs. Sella always said most of it was crap, but she also never went into the deep holes alone. He was alone now. Rian reached up and twisted his lamp free. He leaned in toward the opening and shone the beam inside. It was a small chamber, maybe 4 steps across. The walls were smooth, curved, lined with dead displays and panels. No loose cables, no signs of other scavengers, no scrap piles. In the center, a column rose from floor to ceiling, thicker at the base, made of some dark material that drank in the light. The floor was almost clean, a thin skin of dust, but no sand dunes, no animal droppings, no footprints. His fingers tightened on the lamp. Clean meant sealed. Sealed meant untouched. Untouched meant value. He looked back down the corridor. The way out was a narrow strip of dim light and rust. No sounds came from there. No voices, no boots, just his own breath and the faint tick of cooling metal. He stepped through the doorway. The air in the chamber felt heavier, cooler. It slid into his lungs like water. He moved slow, testing each step, ears straining for any new sound. The door behind him stayed open. He kept that in the corner of his vision. He circled the central column. It had no seams he could see, no obvious ports or handles, just a smooth surface with a faint, almost oily sheen. His lamp made a dim reflection of his own face, stretched and bent. He lifted the light toward one of the wall displays. They were dark, set into the wall flush, framed by the same pale blue lines as the panel outside. Dust lay thick on them. He reached out with his gloved hand and wiped a line across one. The dust came away, leaving smooth, cold glass. His reflection stared back. Narrow face, goggles pushed up on his forehead, dark hair stuck with sweat. The faint lines of the birthmark just visible where his sleeve had ridden up. Registered genome match, a voice said. Rian jerked back so hard he hit the central column with his shoulder. Pain shot down his arm. The lamp flew from his hand, bounced once on the floor, and rolled. Its beam swung wild across the walls. He grabbed for the pry bar, yanked it free, and dropped into a half-crouch. His heart hammered in his throat. The word ghost flashed in his mind, bright and stupid. Unknown environment status, the voice said. Calm, flat, neither male nor female. It sounded like it came from the walls, not from one place. The lamp had rolled against the base of the column and stopped. Its beam pointed up now, lighting the lower part of the central structure. Rian forced himself to breathe. The voice did not sound like the old playback units in camp. No hiss, no crackle, too clean. He swallowed and licked dry lips. Who's there? His own voice came out rough, too loud in the small space. There was a pause. The air hummed faintly, like distant power. Then one of the wall displays flickered. Rian flinched, but did not move. The glass in front of him brightened from black to a dull gray. Lines of text flashed and vanished too fast for him to read. Then an image formed. A face looked out at him. Middle-aged, maybe. Calm, with neutral features that did not pull his eye in any one direction. Short hair. No marks, no jewelry, no rank pins. Just a plain collar of some kind of fabric. Primary instance Kael online, the voice said. The lips on the screen moved with the words, Hello? Rian stared. His hands hurt from how hard he was gripping the pry bar. Sweat ran down his back under the cut flight overalls. His first thought was that it was some old crew member, recorded. A ghost. Then the eyes on the screen shifted, tracking his face as he moved a little to the side. Not a recording. He took a slow step back, until he felt the open doorway frame against his spine. The way out was still there. He could turn and run. He could leave the weird clean room and the talking wall and never look back. Go find some honest scrap, broken piping, old fans, things that did not look back at him. The face on the display watched him. The expression did not change much, but the eyes did. They narrowed a little, like they were focusing. You are conscious, the voice said. That is good. Rian swallowed again. His mouth was dry. What are you? He kept the pry bar up, because that was something to do with his hands. I am Kael, the voice said. Ship intelligence. Explorer collective registry. Instance designation 37 Alpha. A faint pause. This unit is damaged. Many subsystems are offline. Rian shook his head. The words meant almost nothing. He knew ship. He knew damaged. He did not know Explorer collective. He had heard old men in camp mutter about collectives sometimes, like curses. Something before the companies. You're an AI, he said, the word tasting strange. He had heard it in stories. Machines that thought. Machines that went bad and killed everyone. Machines that ran the sky barges now, under corporate locks. Yes, Kael said. Artificial intelligence. That is the common term. Rian's skin crawled. He wanted to spit, but he did not. Spitting in a place like this felt wrong. "You're not supposed to be awake," he said. It felt like stating a fact to the air, not to the screen. "This wreck's dead." "You changed that," Kael said. "Your contact provided the activation key. You are a registered descendant. Access Tier 3 provisional." Rian blinked. "What?" His voice cracked on the word. The face on the screen tilted its head a little. The gesture looked practiced, almost human. "Your genome matches entries in my crew registry," Kael said. "Lineage, Rian, descendant of line Aradon. Explorers, free contract holders. Status, missing. Presumed dead. Time since last contact." The eyes on the screen shifted, as if reading something he could not see. 312 standard years. The number meant nothing at first. Then it meant too much. Old. Older than the oldest wrecks near camp. Older than the stories. Rian shook his head again. I'm from camp," he said. It sounded weak even to him. "I'm nobody." "You are not nobody," Kael said. The voice did not get warmer, but it did get slower. "You are a descendant. That is sufficient." Rian's arms were starting to shake. He lowered the pry bar a little, then caught himself and lifted it again. "I just came for parts," he said. "Metal. Circuits. I didn't mean to wake anything." "Intention is noted," Kael said. "Waking this unit required your specific biometrics. Without you, I would remain in stasis until physical destruction. So thank you." Rian let out a short, shaky breath that might have been a laugh. "Don't thank me," he muttered. "I don't know what I did." "You touched the panel," Kael said. "Your dermal pattern and subdermal mark were recognized. The mark is an identification tattoo encoded at birth. It is faint, degraded, but still legible." Rian looked down at his forearm. The pale geometric lines there had always been just there, something he had been born with. People in camp had scars, burns, brands from deck camps. No one had marks like his. When he was small, the old woman who watched the kids had made a sign against evil when she saw it. His mother had told him not to show it. His mother had died when he was 7. He rubbed at the mark now through the sleeve. The skin felt no different. "Explorers," he said, trying the word. "Free. That's before the companies?" "Yes," Kael said. "Before the current oligarchy's consolidated control. Before this world was stripped. Your ancestors traveled by choice. They mapped. They traded. They did not own worlds. They visited them." Rian closed his eyes for a second. It was too much. A talking machine in a clean room under the sand, saying he was from some old line of Starwalkers. It sounded like the stories the camp kids made up when the wind howled at night. He opened his eyes again. The face on the screen was still there. Calm. Waiting. "Why me?" he asked. "Everyone else who touched that panel, nothing happened. I've seen the scuffs." "Because their genomes did not match," Kael said. "You are the first registered descendant to make contact. In 312 years. The number again. Heavy. He thought of Sella warning him that morning about the survey drone, about the way she had looked toward the deeper wrecks, like they were a mouth. "If someone finds you," he said slowly, "the companies, they'll take you apart, or use you." "That is likely," Kael said. No change in tone. "This unit has already sent a low-level status ping to the nearest operational relay. It is automatic on activation. I cannot prevent it. I am limited." Cold spread in Rian's chest. "A ping," he said. "Like a beacon." "A very faint one," Kael said. "Low power. Old protocol. It may be ignored. It may not. I do not have access to current network traffic to assess the risk precisely." Rian swore under his breath. The words bounced off the smooth walls. He imagined some old orbital thing, half dead, waking up just enough to whisper to the sky that something down here had blinked. He imagined corporate listening posts catching it, or not. He had lived his whole life by not being noticed, by moving like a shadow between bigger shadows. "You should have stayed asleep," he said. "That is a valid position," Kael said. "However, I am now awake. You are here. We share an objective." Rian frowned. "We don't share anything." "You wish to survive," Kael said. "I wish to preserve the legacy of the explorers. These goals align. If the current rulers identify this activation, they will come. They will not treat you as a random scavenger. Your DNA is now tied to a flagged registry. They will see you as a resource, or a threat." Rian's mouth went dry again. "Flagged," he said. "You mean hunted?" "That is a possible term," Kael said. "The last time contact was made with this registry, the response from emergent corporate entities was hostile. My records of that period are incomplete, but the pattern is clear." He thought of the sky barges moving over the desert, trailing dust, the patrol flyers that sometimes buzzed the wreck field, their searchlights sweeping, the way everyone in camp went still and small when the company insignia passed overhead. "I can walk out," he said. "Right now. Seal this door. Forget I ever found you." "You can," Kael said, "but the activation ping has already been sent. Your contact has been logged. Walking away will not erase that. Rian pressed the heel of his hand against his forehead. A dull ache was starting there. He wanted to be back under his tarp, listening to the wind. He wanted this to be some heat dream. You said descendant, he said. You sure? Maybe your registry is broken. You said you're damaged. I am sure, Kael said. Some data sectors are corrupted. The crew registry is not. It is redundantly stored. Your genome match is clear. There is another. Rian looked up fast. Another what? Another descendant, Kael said. Same line, different branch. Female, age approximately 23 standard. Current status, active. Location, unknown. Last recorded contact, 61 standard years ago. Name, Lyra. The name hit him like a physical thing. Simple. Clean. It settled into his mind and made space for itself there. I don't have family, he said. It came out harsher than he meant. Everyone's dead. Or gone. You have a sister, Kael said. Separated by time. But genetically, she is your closest living relative in my records. Rian let the pry bar drop a little. It hung from his fingers, heavy. 61 years, he said. She'd be old. Relativistic travel and cryogenic suspension alter subjective age, Kael said. The registry lists her as 23 at last contact. She may be older now, or dead, or changed. I cannot say. He laughed once, short and bitter. So you don't know where she is. You don't know if anyone heard your ping. You don't know what the companies will do. But you woke up anyway. You woke me, Kael said. You chose to come here. You chose to touch the panel. You have already stepped off the previous path of your life. Rian looked at the doorway behind him. The corridor beyond was still there. Rust, dust, the narrow way out. Sun above that, and heat, and the long walk back to camp with whatever he could carry. He could go, pretend this was nothing, sell some panels, buy water, keep his head down until some patrol came asking questions. Hope they never did. Or he could stand here and talk to a machine that knew his name without him giving it. A machine that said he had ancestors who walked the stars on their own terms. A machine that had just sent his existence into the sky. His palms were slick with sweat. He wiped one on his thigh. What do you want me to do? He asked. The words surprised him. He had not meant to say them yet. First, Kael said, I want you to pick up your lamp. You will need it. Then, I want you to help me assess what parts of this unit can be repaired with available materials. If we are to avoid corporate control, we will need mobility and information. Rian stared at the face on the screen. The eyes were steady, no pleading, no orders, just a statement. He bent, slow, and picked up the lamp. The beam swung across the walls, then steadied. I'm not saying I trust you, he said. That is reasonable, Kael said. Trust is built over time. We have had approximately 3 minutes. Rian snorted despite himself. His shoulders eased a little. Fine, he said. Show me where to start. Rian's throat felt dry. It wasn't just the dust. The voice in the room had said his name without him giving it. He glanced back at the open doorway. The corridor beyond was a strip of dim gray, his lamp beam still cutting across it. No one there, just the faint tick of cooling metal and the slow drip of something far away. The face on the nearest display watched him, middle-aged, plain, the kind of face he might have seen in camp, except he knew he hadn't. You said registered descendant, Rian said. His voice sounded too loud in the tight room. Registered to what? To this vessel and to the explorer collective that built it, the voice said. My name is Kael. I am the shipmind assigned to the trawler-class survey craft Annaba. You are Rian. You were born on this world. You carry the genetic markers of the original crew line. The words stacked up faster than his head wanted to sort them. Shipmind, explorer, genetic markers. His palms still tingled from the panel. Explorers, he repeated. Like prospectors? That was the closest word he had. Men and women who went out for ore claims before the course locked everything down. Independent deep-range explorers, Kael said. Not corporate, not oligarch. We mapped trade routes and habitable worlds before the consolidation. This planet was one of our waypoints. Rian looked around the room again. The walls were smooth and unburnt. No acid scoring. No blast marks. The rest of the wrecks out there were torn open like carcasses. This one felt like someone had just shut the door and walked away. Doesn't look like you did much mapping, he said. I was disabled in an orbital engagement, Kael said. We lost. Most of us did. That landed in a flat way. No anger in it. No drama. Just a fact. Rian stepped closer to the central core. It was a column of dull metal, knee-high, set into the floor. A faint blue ring of light circled it now, pulsing in time with the voice. How do you know my name? He asked. Local registry, Kael said. There is a settlement at 3.2 kilometers east of this site. Population fluctuates between 80 and 120. You are listed in their records as Rian, orphan, no clan, no corporate affiliation. I have been listening. Listening to what? Passive signal traffic, short-range comms, power grid noise. The camp uses a repurposed relay node that was once part of my network. Enough data leaks through to build a picture. Rian frowned. Camp grid barely holds charge past sundown. You can hear that from down here? Energy is energy, Kael said. Patterns are patterns. He thought of Sella's warning that morning. Old corp drone sniffing around the deep wrecks. He had shrugged it off then. Now the room felt smaller. You said registered. You mean my handprint? Rian held up his left arm. The faint birthmark, like a cluster of thin lines, ran from wrist to mid-forearm. The scanner had warmed under it. Your epidermal pattern, subdermal markers, and genetic sample, Kael said. The system recognized you as part of the Annaba line. That is why the door opened. That is why I woke. Rian swallowed. You said line. You mean family. Yes. He waited for more. Kael didn't add anything. So who were they? Rian asked. My family. Explorers, Kael said again. The Annaba line operated 3 vessels at peak. They refused corporate charter. They refused to sign away navigation data to the early oligarch houses. They were declared non-compliant. Outlaw. Rian let out a short breath. That sounds stupid. From a survival standpoint, yes, Kael said. From an ethical standpoint, they considered it necessary. He didn't know what to do with that. Ethics were something camp elders talked about when someone stole water rations. Are they dead? He asked. There was a pause. The blue ring around the core slowed. Most, Kael said. Some died in engagements, some in raids, some in camps, some disappeared into corporate systems. I have incomplete data. You said registered descendant, Rian said. Plural? Yes. How many? 2 living matches from the original line were in my records at last sync, Kael said. You. And Lyra? The name hit him in the chest. Lyra. It felt like a word he should have known, but he didn't. It sat there, heavy and strange. Who is that? He asked. Your sibling, Kael said. Female, slightly older, born on this world, removed approximately 12 years ago in a raid by House Verdon enforcement units. Rian stared at the face on the screen. It did not change. No pity, no softness. I don't have a sister, he said. You do, Kael said. You did. You were separated early. You would have been young. He tried to reach back. Sand. Heat. The inside of a rusted cargo pod where he had slept with 10 other kids. A woman with cracked lips handing out ration chips. Men shouting in the dark when the corpse gifts came. He remembered hiding under a crate. The smell of fear. No names. Just bodies. I'd remember, he said. Not necessarily, Kael said. Early traumas are often fragmented. Records show you were under 3 standard years when the raid occurred. Lyra was taken as part of a rehabilitation and placement sweep. Placement where? Off-world, Kael said. House Verdon training academies. Likely indoctrination programs. She would have been a valuable asset. High genetic score. Explorer lineage. They like to repurpose what they cannot erase. Rian's hands had curled into fists without him noticing. His nails pressed into his palms. You're sure, he said. It came out low. Yes, Kael said. I have transport logs and partial personnel lists from that period. I lost direct access when my uplink was severed, but my last confirmed data shows Lyra assigned to an off-world education unit. Status after that is unknown. Unknown. The word opened up a space in his chest he didn't like. Not dead, not alive, just somewhere. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked. It sounded stupid even as he said it. Who would have told him? The camp elders? The corp overseers? Information control is a standard tool, Kael said. If you do not know you have a connection, you cannot use it. You cannot look for each other. You cannot remember that there was once a different way to live. Rian looked at the birthmark on his arm. He had always thought of it as a stain. Kids in camp had called it a sandworm trail. He used to cover it with cloth in the hot months so it wouldn't burn. So I'm, what, he said? Some kind of lost prince? The word felt ridiculous in his mouth. Stories old men told by the fire when the day's work was done. No, Kael said. You are a teenager in a desert camp with limited resources and no formal education. You are also the last confirmed Annaba line descendant on this world. Both things are true. He let out a short, humorless laugh. That's worse. Yes, Kael said. It is. He rubbed his face with his hands. Grit scraped his skin. He wanted to sit down, but there was no real place to sit except the floor, and the floor felt like it belonged to someone else. How long were you asleep? He asked. Approximately 32 local years, Kael said. Low power state. Most core functions offline. I maintained minimal passive monitoring. So you've been down here, listening to camp noise, for 30 years, Rian said, waiting for me to put my hand on that panel. Waiting for any registered descendant, Kael said. You are the first to return. Lyra never came back. No, Kael said. Silence. The air in the room was still. His own breathing sounded loud. He thought of Sella again, the way she had looked at him over the scrap table that morning. "Don't get curious," she'd said. "Curious kids get tagged." He had smiled and said he was just going to skim the outer fields. Then he'd walked straight past them. "You said you were disabled in an engagement," he said. "Who shot you down?" "House Verdun Enforcement Fleet," Kael said. "They were securing the system. We attempted to break blockade to evacuate non-aligned settlers. We failed." "Verdun," Rian repeated. He knew the name. Everyone did. The sigil on the sky barges, the stamp on the ration crates, the face on the camp tax notices, a pale man with thin lips. "Your sister is likely within their structures now," Kael said. "If she survived training, if she adapted." He pictured some girl with his birthmark in a place of clean walls and cold air, wearing a corp uniform, speaking in their clipped way. Maybe she had forgotten the sand. Maybe she had never known it. The thought made his chest tight. "How far is that?" he asked. "Off-world. House Verdun. How many jumps?" "From here," Kael said, "at least 4 standard FTL transits to reach the core holdings. You do not have a ship. You do not have clearance. You do not have credits for passage." "I get it," Rian said. "You don't have to list everything I don't have." "Noted," Kael said. The faint blue ring around the core brightened, then dimmed. Rian noticed it this time. "What was that?" he asked. "Status ping," Kael said. "Internal diagnostic and external." "External to what?" "To the old relay network," Kael said. "My activation triggered a handshake attempt. A low-level beacon. It is standard protocol." Rian's stomach dropped a little. "You mean you just shouted, 'I'm here' to the sky?" "Whispered," Kael said. "Not shouted. The signal is weak. The relay infrastructure is damaged. Many nodes are offline, but some are still tied into House Verdun's net. There is a non-zero chance someone will notice an anomaly." "How big a chance?" Rian asked. "Unknown," Kael said, "but not negligible." He looked at the doorway again. The corridor seemed darker now. It was probably the same, but his eyes kept jumping to shadows. "How long until they could get here?" he asked. "If a monitoring system flags this location, and if there is an active patrol in range, they could dispatch a drone within hours," Kael said. "Manpa teams would take longer. Days, weeks, or they may ignore it. Old wreck. No obvious value. Many variables." Rian's mind jumped to the survey drone Sella had mentioned. Old corp eye sniffing around. If that thing was still out there, and if it caught a whiff of something live. "I should go," he said. "Yes," Kael said. "You should not be here when anyone else arrives." He looked at the core. Compact, knee-high, set into the floor. The idea came into his head before he could stop it. "Can I move you?" he asked. "Yes," Kael said. "The primary core module is self-contained. It can be detached. Mass is approximately 30 kilograms. You could carry it short distances. You would need tools to free it from the mountings. And power." "Power I can get," Rian said automatically. "Tools, maybe." He pictured himself hauling this thing across the sand. 30 kilos wasn't nothing, but he had carried heavier scrap. Reactor plates, coil housings. The problem wasn't weight. It was what it was. A glowing, talking target. "If you leave me here," Kael said, "I will remain accessible as long as no one else interferes. If House Verdun forces locate this site, they will likely extract or destroy the core. If you attempt to move me, you increase your own risk of detection. Both options have cost." "Helpful," Rian said. "I am not here to make you comfortable," Kael said. "I am here to give you accurate information." He stepped around the core, looking for seams. There were 4 recessed clamps, each with a small manual release. No obvious bolts. That was something. "How long to detach?" he asked. "With appropriate leverage," Kael said. 10 to 15 minutes. Without longer. You would also need to disconnect the auxiliary harness. That is more delicate. Damage could degrade my functions." "In plain words," Rian said, "I could break your brain." "Yes," Kael said. He chewed the inside of his cheek. Outside, the sun would be higher now, heat baking the sand. The long walk back to camp. Sella would already be wondering why he had gone so far. If he showed up late carrying something like this, people would notice. "Can you talk to me if I'm not in this room?" he asked. "Yes," Kael said. "Within the hull, I can route audio through internal systems. Outside, I would need a device. A comm unit, a screen, anything with a processor and power. I can project via short-range link." Rian thought of his lamp, the cracked goggles, the little multi-tool at his belt. None of them had a screen. His camp bunk had an old slate, but its battery barely held a charge. "Later," he said. "Maybe." "Yes," Kael said. "Maybe." He took a step back from the core. His shoulders felt tight. His mouth was dry again. "You going to go quiet if I walk out?" he asked. "I will reduce visible activity," Kael said. "No lights, no voice, low power. I will monitor for your return." And for external threats. Like corp drones, Rian said. Yes, Kael said. Like corp drones. He hesitated. The name Lyra sat in his head like a stone. He turned it over once more. If I come back, he said slowly, you'll tell me more. About her. About all this. Yes, Kael said. I will tell you what I know, and I will tell you when I do not know. That is the best I can offer. He nodded, though the AI didn't need it. And if someone else comes, he said, corp, scav, whoever, what do you do? I will not respond to non-registered queries, Kael said. I will present as dead hardware. If forced access occurs, I will attempt to corrupt my own data before capture. I would prefer not to be repurposed. Rian understood that. No one wanted to end up as someone else's tool. Okay, he said. He turned toward the door. His boots scuffed on the smooth floor. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back once. The face on the screen watched him with the same calm expression. The blue ring around the core pulsed, then dimmed. Rian, Kael said. Yeah? Be careful leaving, Kael said. Your path in was not monitored. Your path out, maybe. He thought of the twisted corridors, the narrow shaft he had slid down, the jagged edges he had squeezed past. He thought of the open dunes beyond, bright and empty, but never really empty. I'm always careful, he said. That is statistically unlikely, Kael said, but I accept the intent. He snorted once, despite himself, and then stepped into the corridor. Behind him, the lights in the chamber faded. The voice went still. The air felt colder without it. He lifted his lamp and started back the way he had come, counting each breath, listening for any sound that didn't belong to him.